Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Okay. I want to start here with this just very quickly. Again, I fully understand a lot of these judges and radical judges are getting arrested, and rightfully so. They should. And again, this is certainly something I think that's going to continue. This kind of behavior, as we all know, is not new, and I want to focus in more specifically on what causes this kind of behavior. So, what is it that causes individuals who are in a position of so-called power or perceived power in order to break the law and do something that is not in their own personal interest, but also at the exact same time believe something that is not real, that leads them to ultimately making an illegal decision that, again, is not in their best interest? As one might expect, this has numerous phrases and numerous names, and there are numerous examples that could be brought up, but I want to hone in on cult indoctrination specifically. Again, people can call it brainwashing. They can call it radicalization, rather. They can call it a lot of things, but it really is cult indoctrination. Again, in essence, they're being led to believe that their current belief system is in fact their own when it is actually not their own. They are simply doing what other people have told them is the right thing to do or the real thing that is happening. And that by, in these cases, of course, protecting illegal aliens, specifically gang members who have hurt legal citizens in the United States, is somehow a good move. Again, the part with cult indoctrination is that the individual, again, is being led to believe something that is not real, that is ultimately leading to their decisions that are not in their own best interests and are quite counterproductive to the very thing that they believe that they have built up, legally speaking, throughout their entire career or their entire life, so much so to the point that their own actions are, again, counterproductive to everything that they allegedly stand for, to the point where they actually break the law based on a false belief system because, again, going backwards, they've been brainwashed and have believed things that are not real. This is all intentional. This is exactly, again, how you destroy individuals. This is how you destroy a profession. This is how you destroy groups of people. And this is how you destroy a nation. Is you do this slowly over the course of time. And again, people can stretch this back basically to any particular event that they maybe saw on their television, believed it to be real, when in fact it was not. Again, it could be the actions or words of a politician. Those individuals, again, leading gullible American citizens or any citizen of a country into believing, again, that the thing that is happening around them and being allowed to happen around them is normal and that it's okay. Take, for example, again, the watering down of the Constitution. Illegal aliens don't have due process in our country. They're not supposed to. The Constitution does not apply to those who are here illegally. This should be common sense. The problem is you have individuals, again, through mass media, mass brainwashing, mass indoctrination, getting individuals who are actual legal citizens in America to believe that the Constitution applies to all individuals who are here illegally and are breaking the law. This is not true. This has never been the case. Criminals and illegal aliens specifically do not have rights that American citizens have. So when anybody, again, is in a position like a judge, for example, or even a lawyer, and they misuse their application of the law, which is really their only job is to apply the law, and then make a ruling on existing law. Doesn't seem like a hard job, but if you're cult indoctrinated and you're brainwashed, it becomes remarkably difficult, and like I said earlier, it causes individuals to not act in their actual best interests, certainly from a legal perspective. So again, let me dive into this just very specific example. Again, there were numerous this past week, but this specifically had to do with Milwaukee Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan on obstruction charges. Long story short, she was overseeing a case in the middle of a case regarding an illegal alien. And she quite literally told the illegal alien and the defense lawyer to stand up and enter her chambers with her. They left the courtroom, went into her chambers, and then she ushered them out the back door and said, "Run." That entire episode, again, that's me paraphrasing the situation, but that entire episode is cult indoctrination. It's the exact opposite of every single thing that a judge is supposed to do in a situation like that. Again, it wouldn't matter what the offense was. If it was murder, if it was rape, if it was drug dealing, all of that is irrelevant. The simple fact is that's the exact opposite of the very thing, as we all know, that a judge is supposed to actually be doing. The problem, of course, is that it's all driven based on lies. It's all driven based on her ideology, which was indoctrinated into her through the cult of the communist left in the interest of, again, getting her to believe something that is not real, that will ultimately lead to her making decisions and doing things that are personally detrimental to, again, her profession, her within her own profession, but her personally. Again, it's a devilish trick, and it's that way on purpose. And again, you can use any example. You can think of all of the individuals, again, who, again, bless their hearts, but you can think of all the individuals who believed the 9/11 lie and then immediately saw that on TV and said, well, that's it, I'm going to war, because I don't want any of these Terrys getting on airplanes and crashing into buildings. None of that happened. None of that happened. But believing all of that lie was part of the cult indoctrination plan to get individuals to, again, leave their own homeland and then go die somewhere else, thereby lowering the population of our own country, destroying families, causing them to enter poverty, one evil action after another, basically. But again, in this particular case, the reason that this is happening more frequently, specifically with judges, lawyers, etc., is because these individuals, again, are quite literally indoctrinated to believing that harboring illegal aliens is okay because they're quote-unquote human beings. They're refugees, and all these other, again, cult indoctrinated words that they use. I listened to the mayor of Milwaukee, a black guy, and he, again, was talking about he was asked very directly why this judge did what they did. And this right here is a perfect example, again, of the cult indoctrination. He openly said that this is the fault of Donald Trump. That was his whole rationalization. He goes, well, I don't know the specifics of this particular judge. I don't know the ins and outs. But what I do know is this, that Donald Trump is scaring people. That he's scaring judges, lawyers, police officers. He's scaring refugees. He's scaring individuals that are being detained by ICE. He's just scaring everybody. And in scaring everybody, that's causing individuals to act irrationally or, again, evade police or not listen to lawyers or not listen to judges. And it's all of this fear-mongering from the right and from Donald Trump, so to speak, that's causing all of this to take place. Again, this is how deep the brainwashing and cult indoctrination really goes. It stretches all the way through government because, again, all of these individuals are in this together. They're all involved in this together. They all believe these same things. The moment that they deviate from any of these belief systems, which, again, beliefs are not facts, the moment that happens is the moment that they lose their job. So they're all in. They have to stick with this same narrative. They have to stick with this cult indoctrination belief system, which is brainwashing, and then they have to act on it. And like I said, what they don't know, or they aren't even thinking about because they're not that bright, is that it's actually counterproductive to the very thing that they're supposed to be doing, not just on a professional level, but on a personal level. And then they're actually trying to rationalize that their decision-making, based on something that isn't real, and their belief system, is actually keeping the people around them safer and citizens safer as a result of them doing what they're doing. Let me play 6 minutes of this guy because he's a complete dimwit. His name is Cavalier Johnson. Again, he's addressing the Milwaukee County Circuit Court judge case regarding Hannah Dugan, and this was, again, just a couple of days ago. So give him a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
or making some progress on settling armed conflicts that are happening around the world, or remedying the mistakes that they've made as they've slashed through important federal programs, things that we're feeling right here in Milwaukee with some of the layoffs at the Center for Disease Control. This overly dramatic arrest of a judge at a county courthouse adds to a big problem created by the federal approach to immigration enforcement. What they've done is drive away people from participating in what are legitimate courthouse activities. Now, these folks, they may be victims, they may be witnesses, civil case participants, or people who receive traffic tickets. When these folks are driven away, that makes our community less safe. These folks should be encouraged to participate in court proceedings, not being encouraged to go away from court proceedings. But that's what these actions actually cause. They're not going to participate in court cases if they fear being swept up in immigration enforcement. That's exactly the groundwork that the Trump administration has laid here in what is quite evidently an attempt to showboat. And it's unfortunate. I think it makes our community less safe.
Mayor, Judge Dugan is accused of misdirecting federal agents inside the courthouse. If she did, in fact, do these actions, are you okay with those actions?
Look, I think that Judge Dugan is not a flight risk. He's not somebody that's going to run away. Typically, when something like this happens, an indictment of a potential defendant is ordered. There'll be a court appearance. That didn't happen in this case. I think what happened here was just showboating. They're just trying to have this show of force, and in the process of doing this in a courthouse where people need to go for court proceedings, they're scaring people away from participating in the process. So if they are witness to a crime or something of the sort, they're not going to go and participate, and that makes our community less safe.
So the issue is with how the arrest happened, not necessarily that there was an investigation.
Again, I don't know all the things that happened there, but I'm saying that the way that they went about this, in this ham-handed, haphazard way that this administration has been doing since day one, it's driving people away, or has potential to drive people away from participating in court proceedings, which makes our community less safe. I want people to go to court. I want people to have their day in court. I want people to hold folks accountable in our judicial system, but the actions of this administration are driving people away from doing that, and that's not good for public safety in Milwaukee.
Do you believe this man should be deported?
I'm sorry?
Do you believe this man should be deported?
I don't know any information about the man. I'm talking specifically about the Trump administration's actions as it relates to this case and what they've been doing with immigration overall since he's been president again. They're scaring people. They're scaring people in this community. They're scaring people in immigrant communities all across the United States. And when folks don't participate in our judicial system, bad things happen. Our community becomes less safe. And that's the message that I'm trying to get across.
Do you believe this sets a dangerous precedent moving forward to future judges that could be arrested for similar action?
Quite possibly so, but I hope that the answer is no. I mean, if a judge is being arrested in a courthouse, just imagine the chilling effect that it sends to other folks who would otherwise participate in judicial proceedings in our courthouse, and not just in the Milwaukee County Courthouse, but courthouses across the state of Wisconsin and courthouses across the United States. This makes our community less safe. Less safe. And that's not a good thing for public safety in Milwaukee or anywhere across our country.
Know if this happening anywhere else?
I don't know if this is happening anywhere else. I haven't seen that. I just know that it's happened here, and I'm concerned about what happens on around public safety on the ground in this city.
I'm going to leave it there. I think you get it. Again, his powers of rationalization are mind-numbing. Every single thing that he said is completely preposterous. That he actually believes that if judges are being arrested for breaking the law right then and there on the spot regarding an illegal alien, that somehow that's going to deter individuals from wanting to go to court. Specifically, again, illegal aliens or individuals who have broken the law, and that somehow those individuals then will stay on the streets, and those individuals will be making other people less safe. It's such a roundabout rationalization that is just beyond anything logical. Again, it's also not a new process or a new procedure to scoop up illegal aliens in court or when they are on their way to court, or surveil these individuals, get court documents, figure out the day that these individuals are supposed to go to court, and then wait around for them to show up to court. And when he said specifically, well, everybody deserves their day in court. No. If you're an illegal alien, you don't belong in our courts. You belong in handcuffs on a plane and back to where you came from. There's no court proceeding that has to take place. We know you're illegal. It's that simple. We don't have to charge you with any kind of a particular crime, or you don't have to pay a fine as a result of a traffic ticket, like he said, regarding a civil offense. The fact is if you're illegal, you're already breaking the law, which means you can be snatched up at any point and at any time, no matter what. That's the way that it should have always been, because that's the law in this country. So, yeah, it's actually a brilliant move to sit around a courtroom, certainly a courthouse, and wait for an illegal alien to show up for one procedure or another. I've even, again, shown videos on the war videos of that taking place. ICE agents, again, will wait around in a lobby, or they'll wait on an elevator, and they'll wait again for an illegal alien to either leave the courtroom or enter the courtroom. And in some cases, they've arrested these individuals right when they get out of an Uber on their way into the actual courthouse itself. And they go, "Are you so-and-so?" And they go, "See." And then that's it. And they cuff them and they arrest them. That's the way that's supposed to happen. You talk about keeping people safe. That's exactly what should happen. They're scooping them up right then and there, and they're getting rid of them. So again, this cult indoctrination is all based on, again, believing things that are not real, and getting individuals to actually twist the law in their own mind when they themselves are the ones who are supposed to be applying the law. And then it ends up actually hurting them in the entire process. So now this particular judge is going to be disbarred. She'll never be able to practice law ever again. She'll be a felon. She'll never be a judge, clearly, and that'll be the end of her career. Same thing again with the other judge and his wife. I want to say that was in New Mexico, if memory serves. The particular gang member, MS-13 gang member that they were harboring in their own home, they actually attempted to smash his phone into multiple pieces. Now, again, this is how stupid these people are. They were so dumb that they actually believe that if you smash a phone somehow, any of the data that was collected on that phone is somehow gone. It's not. Every single thing, every picture, every text message, every single thing is always held on the cloud. And it's basically, again, the phone service's computer, essentially. And they can access all of that information, and they did. And they accessed the pictures of the MS-13 member that, again, this individual was harboring. And he had pictures of decapitated bodies on his cell phone. But again, if you listen to the Milwaukee mayor, he would lead you to believe that protecting those individuals and individuals who have pictures of decapitated bodies who happen to be gang members on their own cell phones, that's somehow a good thing and protecting the community, as opposed to arresting the judges who are harboring these illegal aliens, and that is actually somehow, I don't know, less safe for the community, is completely backwards, 100% upside down, and totally absurd. But again, these people are a member of a cult. They don't understand that they've been lied to their whole lives about everything. And so they just keep believing these lies. They, of course, obtain power, so they think, within particular positions, still operating on things that are not real. And then, again, it ends up blowing up right in their face like an Acme cigar from Looney Tunes. Every single time it happens. And they have no idea that it's all based on things that they believe to be true that are in fact not. That actually leads me to this now. This is a greatawakening.win post, again, made anonymously by an individual. They said this is their opinion. And they said the following here. They said, "America, we have an enemy combatant problem. And they were paid to be installed in our institutions to undermine and overtake from within. They are judges, district attorneys, activists, politicians, community organizers, and fake charities." I would add schools to that list as well. Here's what they said. They said, quote, "This problem is funded by outside entities. Soros family, China, Israel, and the Satanic family for starters. This problem is also funded by American taxpayers whom politicians intentionally defraud and steal from, as a recent example USAID shows. So let's define unlawful enemy combatant. It says the Supreme Court coined the term in 1942 when it ruled in the case to distinguish between lawful and unlawful enemy combatants. Quote, unlawful combatants are likewise subject to capture and detention, but in addition, they are subject to trial and punishment by military tribunals for acts which render their belligerency unlawful. Unquote. It says the Military Commissions Act of 2006 gave the President the authority to set up a military commission to try enemy combatants. The act also states, quote, no alien, unlawful enemy combatant subject to trial by military commission under this chapter may invoke the Geneva Convention as a source of rights, unquote. The defendant does not have the rights, or right rather, to file habeas corpus petitions and can receive the death penalty. It was amended in 2009 in part due to making the law more in line with the Supreme Court. President Barack Obama's administration stopped using the term enemy combatant, quote-unquote, in 2009, in what the New York Times reported at the time was intended to symbolically separate the new administration from the Bush detention policies, unquote. It says, while authorities decide whether an individual should be tried in civilian court or deemed an enemy combatant, the government can use a public safety exception that allows them to question an individual before he or she is notified of their Miranda rights. Enemy combatants may have their habeas corpus rights, the right for anyone imprisoned by America to challenge their imprisonment, suspended. Therefore, they can be imprisoned for an indefinite period of time without being able to challenge it. So if they want to play games and extend lawfare on the United States, we have plenty of tools to play that game too. But the problem is on display now for all the world to see. The only thing is they have to decide, do we move on this before or after they have the goons' heads out into the streets to burn the place down? I say head it off now and start the process of calling these people what they are and begin the purge that should have been done on day one in 2017. See where it got us? They said declare Soros and his demon-spawned terrorists now. Begin the process and spotlight all the cockroaches he flooded with money and remove the judges and district attorneys, politicians, and MSM outlets from the public and put them in the cage in suspended incarceration. Revoke the Soros family from entering America, put a reward on their heads and round them up, chained to the floor of a C-130 with full neck, leg, and arm shackles, of course in an orange jumpsuit. Make the first epic arrest enough to garner world celebration to start things off right. And that is my opinion, unquote. Again, what's interesting about this is that the term enemy combatant specifically is designated when it comes to authorization for use of military force. And then, of course, a person has to ask themselves, well, is our military in charge of particular things right now, certainly behind the scenes? I believe this to be the case. At the exact same time, well, there's ample evidence that that's the case, but certainly if the Insurrection Act was signed. But even so, the delicate balance with all of this, in my opinion, is that, as I've said before, you can't shout a particular thing from the rooftop necessarily, certainly something that would tip the scale in one direction or another and cause social chaos across the entire world. Again, if people want to have protests about Doge or the Trump administration or what have you, that's fine, and those idiots get to expose themselves for the dummies that they are. They do it in the town where I live. They do it everywhere. They make up signs that say, keep your hands off my Social Security, and they have no idea that it's been government and both sides of the aisle that have been literally stealing their Social Security this entire time and laundering it and putting it, of course, into their own pockets. So again, you can't help this cult indoctrination in these kinds of people. However, you can slow roll this kind of information out to individuals to show them exactly who it is that's been breaking the law and what these people are actually capable of. And the simple fact, again, that you're actually seeing judges be arrested is a good thing. And that they're being arrested for, again, harboring and protecting illegal aliens. The fact that people are seeing that is a good thing. The fact that those individuals are being held accountable is a good thing. And it should send a message to other judges that, yeah, no one is above the law, so to speak, as cliche as that is. But at the exact same time, that's exactly supposed to be true. That's exactly what is supposed to happen all of the time. It doesn't matter if you're a politician or you aren't. You don't have immunity from anything. I mean, I understand presidential immunity, so to speak, but again, if the president kills someone unlawfully or rapes someone or whatever, they aren't immune because they're a president of the United States. So anybody below them, which of course is everybody, anybody in the judicial system, of course, anybody in the legislative branch, anybody below them within those own branches, all of these individuals, again, should and can be held accountable. Like I said, Bob Menendez, when Senator Bob Menendez was arrested and now in jail for whatever it is, 10, 11 years, and hopefully he dies there, I mean, that right there is a snowflake on the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the number of people who belong in jail. But the simple fact that we haven't seen, typically speaking, judges going to jail for again, believing things that aren't real and attempting to protect illegal aliens, and that we're now seeing that's a very good move. And of course, we're seeing it because they're being held accountable and they're being arrested. Mugshots are being taken, pictures of them in handcuffs. This is all on purpose, and this is all a very good thing. Because again, if that starts to crack through and cut through some of the cult indoctrination with some of these individuals, then so be it. But I agree with the poster there that we have to go after the money. You have to go after the money funders. You have to go after the source, which is exactly, again, why I think the Pope is dead. This is one of those things where, again, the Vatican was always the head of the so-called religious center of the entire Babylonian cult, so to speak, and that, again, they're no longer in control. That we took the money back from them. We have the money. The United States is imposing tariffs on everybody, which is bankrupting other nations and forcing them, again, to want to have equal trade with us. And once you go after the money and you go after the funders like USAID and all of that fraud, all of these individuals, again, that have been manipulated through the constant financial manipulative system, they have nothing else to play with. They have no more money to play with to continue their grift. The money is the head of the snake, and the people who direct where the money goes is always the head of the snake. If you cut that off, the tail will wither away. And that's part of what you're seeing right now. I think that's part of what we're all seeing right now, is we're watching the tail just withering away and shaking, and the body believing that it's alive, even though the head has been chopped off. And it continues to be chopped off again within all three branches of government, among numerous individuals from the top all the way down, again within every other business as well, just like education. And then before you know it, again, the tail starts to wither, and then it eventually will stop because it won't have a choice. It'll either go bankrupt or break the law in the process because of their own indoctrination, or they'll just quit and they'll just give up. So it's lose-lose for them, just like, again, this entire judge fiasco. It's lose-lose for everybody. They either are forced to break the law because of things that they actually believe to be true, which are not, which again forces a particular behavior on their part, or they comply. So they either go to jail for not complying and breaking the law, or they stay out of jail for not complying, and in not complying, they still look guilty because they're having to backtrack on their entire belief system, which happens to be fake. It's one hell of a mind screw. There's no way around it, but this is exactly how, again, you demoralize and destroy an entire nation. You have to trick people into believing things that are not real, and then get them to act on it. Let me give you another example, sliding into education now. Cicely sent this from me. This is from 37s on Gab. And they posted a Reddit post on here, and again, if I haven't read this Reddit post before, I've read ones that are similar to it. It sounds familiar, but again, it's worth reading. And here's what this individual said. Again, this is on the Reddit thread Teachers. It was titled, My high achievers, are starting to notice their hard work doesn't matter. They said, quote, 6th grade teacher in a SBG district. We are not allowed to take off any points for late work, And because creativity / visual appeal, quote unquote, on projects isn't a standard of mine, I'm not allowed to grade it. Meaning one kid has a poster with nothing, but some words written in pencil, gets the same exact grade as the kid who went above and beyond. They've started to notice that the kids who turn things in late face no consequences, and the kids who do the bare minimum get the same grade as them. One of them said to my face, quote, "How is it fair he turned his project in late with nothing but pencil on his poster, but mine is on time and creative, but we get the same grade," unquote. They went on and said, "I didn't know how to respond appropriately, so I asked my admin what I should say, and they told me, quote, 'Tell them that life isn't fair,' unquote." So now I have kids catching on to this, refusing to work because they now know they can do it whenever they want with no consequences. And then when they do work, they do the bare minimum, because why would you work harder for the same amount of credit? They said, honestly, I can't blame them. I would do the exact same thing if I was in 6th grade now. I don't know how to solve this problem because, quote, "if it's not a standard, it can't be graded," unquote. First of all, I would say in summary, that right there is again how you demoralize an entire nation. You have to start with the demoralization of youth. If you can get youth to become more lazy than usual and not care about what they're actually producing, then they'll never look for the truth. They'll never critically think. They'll never apply themselves toward anything that's actually factually accurate. And more importantly, as they age, they'll never even look for the truth. They'll never even think about looking for the truth because they will believe that, again, that the bars around them within the cage that has been purposely built around them are okay. And unfortunately, those bars are invisible, as numerous people have written about before, certainly Aldous Huxley, Mark Twain, you name it. Lots of individuals have brought that up before, and they're 100% right. But again, if I had a nickel for every single time that I experienced something similar to that when I taught school, I would have bags of nickels. There's one specific case, again, that pops into my mind, and I think I've brought this up before, but it was a scheduling issue that was common within the middle school where I worked. And again, I taught an exploratory class, which of course was health education. And the problem is that based on Florida state law at the time, and Florida state standards rather at the time, within their Department of Education, everybody was supposed to take every exploratory class once. That's why schools had so many exploratory classes, was again, it wasn't because students were allowed to sign up for whichever one they wanted. I mean, they couldn't take art class twice. You really weren't supposed to take gym twice. You're not supposed to take drama twice. You're not supposed to take health education twice. You're supposed to take it once, and everybody is supposed to pass through the class once. The problem was we had stupid people doing the scheduling for our particular school. And it was all computerized too, which was the ironic part. And this too became a massive point of contention between me and the principal of the building. Because I was looking her in the face and saying, you know what your problem is, and you're refusing to fix it. And in refusing to fix the problem that you've created, you're then pushing this problem on the rest of us who are then having to mop up all of your shit. And one of those problems, of course, is I had students take my class as a 6th grader, and then they would come back the very next year and take it again as a 7th grader. Now, yes, some of the material would be a little more advanced, and it always was. I mean, I had a general 6th grade sort of approach, where, again, there were certain things that I wouldn't show them or explain to them that I would explain to an 8th grader. However, I didn't keep factual information from any grade, which, again, sort of streamlined the entire subject among all of the grades. But the problem is we had students, again, taking the same class twice, sometimes 3 times, and they didn't want to be in there 3 times. Again, they knew the class, they were familiar with the vocabulary, they had done everything before. Even though I mixed things up all the time and showed different things and explained different things, it didn't matter, and I didn't blame them. because there were exploratory classes that they had not taken. So again, in a middle school, you're in an exploratory class, generally speaking, for a semester, which means you're talking about 6 exploratory classes across 3 years. That's not complicated. There were more than 6 exploratory classes that we had in our entire school. So there would be no excuse as to why any singular student would be repeating the same exploratory class 2 semesters or 2 years in a row, let alone 3. And as a result of this, in one particular case, and it happened more than once, but this particular case happened in this one instance where I again voiced my displeasure, was there was a female student who took my class as a 6th grader, and she got an A. And she did all the work. She turned in everything on time. She was a very good student. She knew everything that was going on. She studied. She had it all figured out. And again, she was a good student. She took the class a second time and she failed. Now, why did she fail? Did she fail because I failed her? No. She earned an F. She didn't turn in the work. She stopped turning in anything. She didn't write anything down. She was doing poorly on any assessment that I was giving. She didn't think that she had to do it anymore because she had already done it once. Now, I don't necessarily blame her. I blame the administration again for not doing what they were supposed to do, which was keeping her out of my class because she had already taken it. But instead, what ended up happening was not only administrative negligence on the front end, but it was administrative negligence on the back end. The school year ends, and it's June. I drive up to Ohio. I would always spend my summers in Ohio. I drive up to Ohio. I'm on a golf course with my dad, and I'm on a tee box, and my phone rings. I walk off the tee box over to the golf cart, grab my cell phone, answer it, and it's the assistant principal of the building. And he goes, "Hey, Sean." And I went, "Yes." I didn't tell him what I was doing, but he seemed to already know for some reason. God knows how he knew. I don't know. Maybe my dad yelled at him something. But anyway, like, "It's your turn to hit," something like that. And he golfed too, this assistant principal, and he was a complete dimwit. But either way, he called me and he was in his office and he's looking at these grades. And again, he got a parental complaint from this kid's parent who could clearly see that she had failed this class. And he asked me why over the phone. Again, this is the first week of summer break. Why did she fail? I said, "Look at my grades." I said, "You can go into my grading system and see why she failed. She didn't turn anything in. She got something like, whatever it was, a 52%, something like that." Said, "It's not my fault. She just didn't do it." And then I unloaded on him and I said, "This is your problem." I said, "Do you know why?" And he laughed and he goes, "No." I said, "She's taking my class twice. She took it the first time and got an A. She took it this time and got an F. Whose fault's that?" I said, "Yeah, I blame her for not doing the work, but I blame you for putting her in the class twice." I said, "Do whatever you want with her grade. I don't care." I said, "She failed. She earned an F." And then that was it. He goes, "Well, okay, whatever." He goes, "Enjoy your golf game." And I went, "Yeah, take care." And I hung up the phone. And they ended up passing her. They gave her a passing grade. I don't know what grade because I don't remember, but I want to say it was something like a C. They just manually changed her grade just because. From an F to a C. Again, there's nothing ethical about that. But see, that's the administrative state. That's their entire role. Their entire role is to frame a particular picture in the way that they want so that it deflects blame off of them and their own wrongdoing, makes it look like you've done something wrong, but when you have the facts on your side and you throw it back on them, well, then who's caught in the middle? So then they're the ones who are left to manipulate what actually happened in the middle instead of actually just fixing the problem so that they're not making more work for themselves in the long run or in the short term. Again, they're making work. It goes back again to the judges. By believing things that are not real and by applying things that are not real and actions to stories that are not real, they're actually making not only more work for themselves, but they're putting themselves in serious peril and legal peril as a result of their own actions. So it's a vicious cycle, but it's a cycle that is in every single business that I can think of, and certainly, again, in the education business. Let me give you another example here. This, too, is one of the things, again, you've heard me bring up on the show, and it's happening with regularity, are the number of schools, again, that are having to tell states and state governments and state departments of education that they are, in fact, doing away with their DEI programs. I played the Dayton Public School audio from last week, where they openly said, well, we're not going to adhere to what the state says because we're all black and we wear masks on our faces and we're the ones that have it all figured out and we don't like anybody who discriminates and blah, blah, blah. So again, talk about cult indoctrination. That's it right there. They literally wear it as an article of clothing on their face, not knowing that the thing that's on their face is unnecessary for something that doesn't even exist. And yet they're still doing it. And now they're doubling down with a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy that was created out of thin air to be a social engineering program to normalize discrimination against whites. So much so that it literally got superintendents, building administrators, et cetera, to actually believe that hiring, quote unquote, more people of color would somehow advance all the students academically because they would start to see somebody who was of their own race. You can't make a more bigoted statement than that. That a student will only succeed, again, as I've brought up before numerous times, that somehow believing, falsely so, that by looking at a teacher who happens to be your same race, that by default you're going to do better as a result in that particular person's classroom. It's absurd. It's as dumb as believing that if you have anything associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that social engineering experiment, which of course was designed to fail, and designed to brainwash and obfuscate and distract and deflect and 1,000 other things, that in the middle of all of that, it was designed to demoralize, which it did. So it had its intended purpose. But now again, people are so used to the insanity, not knowing it's insane, because they're brainwashed, and it's cult indoctrination, that they're quite literally putting themselves in legal peril to the point where they might lose federal funds. So specifically in the state of Ohio, if anybody's curious as to how much federal funds schools tend to get, you can usually use this as kind of a metric system, so to speak. If your school district, and it might be this way in practically every state, but if your school district has one high school, okay, your whole school district just has one high school, you're probably entitled to, or entitled is the wrong word, you're usually receiving anywhere from $6 to $8 million a year in federal funds, just size-wise. Of course, if you double it and you have two high schools within your school district, you can do the math on that. It's approximately 14 million or so. Again, add another school, you're talking 21 million, and that's how much money, again, you typically receive from the federal government. Just using a high school as its own metric system, how many high schools a district has. But this was from the local newspaper, Tri-County newspaper here in Southwest Ohio, the Journal News, and it said the following. It says, most local public school districts are acting in unison in signing recently required federal ban of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in their schools. It says a review of Butler County school systems shows at least 8 of the 10 publicly funded districts have signed off on the new DEI ban. These include Lakota, Middletown, Fairfield, Madison, Edgewood, Ross, Monroe, and Talawanda, in the town where I live. It says officials from Hamilton and New Miami schools did not respond this week to queries from the Journal News. And they were supposed to sign off on this last Friday, basically saying that, yes, we're doing away with our DEI programs. Now, again, keep in mind, this requires them very directly to fire the individuals, again, who are responsible for all of these DEI programs. And some of these school districts, certainly the larger ones that had a little bit more money, they were quite specifically hiring individuals and creating their own DEI office where typically 2 or sometimes 3 individuals would be working within these offices and making copious amounts of money, as much as an administrator. And yet they're never in a classroom setting. They're quite literally creating, again, professional development, quote unquote, and PowerPoint presentations, and creating all of these random national statistics on whatever it is that they thought was diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then introducing that within school buildings for school teachers as actual professional development. I can't help but think of my own dissertation research when it came to this very thing. That kind of professional development is quite literally designed to be counterproductive. It's designed to make the environment less safe, more violent, and it's done through demoralization. It's like looking at a white person in these, again, DEI programs and all this professional development and whatever else, and looking at them and saying, you are intrinsically racist, whether you know it or not. There's no faster way to piss off a human being who knows who they are. But a brainwashed goon who has no idea who they are would nod their head in agreement because they're incapable of an original thought. The article went on here. It said, elsewhere in the region, officials with the Dayton Public Schools made headlines last week in announcing that it would not sign the federally ordered ban of DEI programs. That's because they're retarded. It says President Donald Trump's administration sent a Dear Colleague letter to all U.S. schools on April 3rd requiring them to verify that they don't use DEI classroom instruction or other programs to advantage one race over another. And like I said in the last episode on Friday, I said that executive order sent shockwaves through every single school district across the nation, also in the state of Ohio, to the point where administrators were immediately putting out emails to their staff members saying, we're going to pay attention to this, we're going to watch out for this, and we're going to do whatever we can, of course, to follow the law or not follow the law, depending on how they were framing their emails. Because, again, they have to get rid of this or else. Then the public, of course, has oversight over them, and we get to tell the federal government that they're not doing particular things, and then, of course, an investigation opens up, federal eyes are on top of them, and before you know it, they ended up, losing either part or all of their federal funds because they're refusing to comply. These schools can't afford to lose a dime. But like I said earlier, the treasurer in Westerville City Schools in central Ohio seems to believe that every single school in the state of Ohio is going to have a levy on the ballot this November, based on, again, the state budgetary bill that's going to be signed into law for the entire year and how that's all going to shape out and whatever else. Again, good luck with that. It isn't going to happen. I mean, they might attempt to put it on the ballot, but only the most brainwashed would actually, again, vote to tax themselves. Point being, again, just to wrap up with this particular DEI nonsense, is, again, these individuals are given a clear choice, just like the judges. You have a clear choice as to exactly what you have to do. You've believed lies this entire time. You love bending the knee to government and being manipulated by them all the time when the shoe was on the other foot. But now that the shoe has changed feet, so to speak, and now you're being asked to do the exact opposite of the thing that you had no problem implementing in the first place when you never implemented it before. Now that it's the exact opposite of your so-called belief system, not knowing you were manipulated from day one, now all of a sudden it upsets you. The only thing that should upset any of these people, certainly in the education business or anywhere else for that matter, is that they continue to just believe lies. It's like that meme where it says, don't ask me why I didn't tell you the truth. Ask yourself why you didn't look into it on your own. It's just deflection. Deflection is all they have. They never like holding a mirror up to their faces and saying, wait a minute, this was my fault. I was the one who just blindly believed this. It's being reversed now. I don't like that it's being reversed because I've been told by others that it's discriminatory, and if we get rid of DEI, then I'm now a racist, or whatever other fake term they want to use. And then they use that, again, as their own rationalization for their current stance on the latest thing. It stretches back again to exactly why they can't meme. Why the brainwashed can't meme. Because you can't make a meme if you're brainwashed because you don't know what the truth is, because that's what a meme is. A meme is a digital message that is telling you the truth to your face using words and or imagery. But if you don't know what it is, then a meme is going to confuse the ever-living hell out of you. Just like reversing DEI. DEI was fake to begin with. It was like a monkey riding a unicorn. But they believed, whatever, flying monkeys riding flying unicorns, and then all of a sudden you take that away and they go, no, you can't take away my flying monkey riding my flying unicorn. And then that's it. And then they panic. And before you know it, you get a judge, leading an illegal alien and his lawyer out of the back door of a courthouse. and then everybody gets arrested. But schools are doing this too. Schools have been harboring illegal aliens, sex offenders, criminals, felons, you name it. They protect their own also. They protect their own employees. Child abusers, pedophiles, they move them around. This is the behavior. Instead of getting rid of the riffraff and making less work for themselves in the short and long term, their own personal cult indoctrination is so ingrained in them now that they actually believe that if they just stand firm in their belief system, then everything will be fine. And yet, and this is the hypocritical part, and this should be, again, the glaring reality and truth in all of this, is that all of those schools, specifically, of course, in the county where I live, all of those schools that immediately comply with the state and sign off and say, yes, we're doing away with our DEI programs because now it's unlawful. Well, doesn't that imply that it was illegal in the first place? Isn't that a direct implication that you were actually doing something that was violating the Civil Rights Act from the word go, the moment that it came around? And that maybe, just maybe, in a school board meeting when you create a PowerPoint presentation and you're talking about hiring freezes or trying to hire different individuals or new individuals or employee retention or whatever subject you're bringing up, you actually have the stones to say something completely bigoted like, we're trying to hire more people of color? And that right there might be, again, a civil rights violation. Because it's the same as saying whites need not apply. But if a white person said the exact opposite and said, we're trying to hire more white people and less blacks, what would happen with that particular administrator? All hell would break loose. Again, if it weren't for double standards, they'd have no standards at all. That's essentially where I'll end that. But the chickens are coming home to roost here, and they don't like it. And to that I say, too flippin' bad. Deal with it. There's also this, kind of in the same line, you've heard me bring this up before, this particular education conference, the Midwestern Educational Research Association. You talk about a group of nitwits, my God in heaven. Well, believe it or not, their conference, ironically enough, is also in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Go figure, the irony. Their 2025 conference theme and call for submissions has been postponed again. And the deadline is now May 1st because, of course, they're not getting enough submissions or they're not getting enough submissions on this particular subject, which ironically enough also has to do with artificial intelligence. So the actual theme of the conference for this year is titled Navigating the Future, Harnessing Artificial Intelligence in Education for Research, Teaching, and Leadership. Let me read this very quickly. It says, quote, this year's theme centers on artificial intelligence, a transformative force with the potential to reshape societies from how we manage daily tasks to how industries and systems operate. In particular, the impact of AI on the education system requires critical discussion, exploration, and innovation. AI tools, including machine learning algorithms, adaptive learning platforms, and conventional AI like ChatGPT, offer opportunities to enhance educational excellence and equity. These tools support curriculum design, personalized learning, advanced research methodologies, and policy development. However, alongside these opportunities, AI also presents various challenges and concerns. Oh, it certainly does. Let me lay out just a few of these challenges and concerns, certainly regarding the indoctrination system that is quote unquote American education. One of the challenges and concerns is that it will create laziness, that it won't create any creative thought of the actual individual instructor. The individual instructor will run to AI, overuse it, over-rely on it, and say, I need a lesson. I need you to create me a classroom lesson based on this subject and this specific theme. And then an AI system will do that. And then you can have a conversation back and forth with that AI system and say, well, how much time will this particular lesson take? And you can tailor it right to the size of your classroom, the time in which the students are in your classroom, et cetera, et cetera. Again, there's no individual creativity. It's reliance on other individuals to create something for you from an algorithm. The other problem, of course, is that AI overuse is going to create an over-reliance on false history, which is simply an evil propagandized version of a story that is being told and perpetuated. It's not the truth. As you can see, that would be a huge problem. The other issue, of course, for these school systems in adopting AI is that they don't know that the actual employees themselves can use these systems, as I wrote in a previous Substack, for their own legal gain and for their own legal defense. Which means you're going to have individuals who are school teachers no more than their so-called union representatives. They're going to know more than their administrators. And they can use these AI systems, again, to advance themselves from a legal mental knowledge standpoint. And it can be used against those administrators and those union individuals and anybody else who seeks to come after them for one reason or another, because they won't have a leg to stand on. The individuals using these AI systems for, again, practicing law, and I'm using that term loosely, but it's true. I mean, they're basically practicing law. They're learning about what their legal rights are in any working environment. And again, you can tailor those questions right down to an individual within a working environment, given a specific scenario or situation. That's going to be detrimental for the education business as well, because it's going to make unions obsolete. Why have a teachers union when you can defend yourself? When you know the law, when you know the policy. And I can see it already transpiring right now. You can see the sophomoric and sophistry approach that everybody's going to take with such a scenario, because they'll say something like this. You approach an administrator who's discriminating against you or violating your own rights or whatever it may be. Violating, again, codes of conduct, state policy, you name it. And then you show them exactly what laws they're violating and what codes of conduct or policy they're violating in their approach toward you. And then they look back at you and they say, well, how do you know that? Are you a lawyer? And you say, well, I don't have to be a lawyer to be literate. And I don't have to be a lawyer to read the law, codes of conduct, and everything else, our contractual obligations that, of course, we all sign off on. I know what they are, and they're right here. That's making it easier then for that employee to take it to a lawyer to then file criminal complaints if they choose to do so, or they can do it pro se and use AI to actually file against their fellow employees or even their own bosses in an effort, again, to do what is legally correct and morally and ethically correct. So AI in the education profession, if I was to summarize it, is going something like this. it's making the profession as a whole obsolete from a legal standpoint, an employment standpoint, and an instructional standpoint. Because every single child, student, can use AI systems to find answers for numerous things now, which means why even have a teacher? Why even have a classroom? Again, it's quite specifically making the entire quote-unquote profession obsolete. There's no need for it anymore. The American schooling system as we know it is like Blockbuster Video. I just saw a video of Blockbuster Video that was fascinating to me. It was an entire map. Again, it was a video. Map of the United States. It showed when Blockbuster Video showed up, where it first showed up, how many stores, all of it. And it tracked it from, I believe it was the 1980s when late 80s when Blockbuster Video first showed up, late 80s, early 90s. And then at its peak was around 2003, 2004. And then a decline. There's only one Blockbuster Video store, if it's still in use, that was left in the United States that was still open, and it was in 2019 in the state of Oregon. That's it. But you watch this map and you watch them all pop up, and they're all popping up as these little yellow dots all over this blue map, and then you just see them all start to decline and go away. The American schooling system is going to be the exact same way. Unless, of course, they do the thing that I've always said that they need to start doing, which is you make it for those individuals, and they've even attempted to do this already without telling people, but you make it for individuals by using the so-called existing law and disabilities law that exist on the book now to their advantage. But you make the environments only available for the mentally handicapped and the physically disabled. That way, every able-bodied, able-minded individual doesn't have to go. The problem is that it's already that way, but the brainwashing and the cult indoctrination keeps people going back to these environments because they don't know anything else. But again, one by one, and it is happening constantly, parents and their children are saying, wait a minute, this school environment is giving you a laptop computer, they're giving you artificial intelligence, and then they're telling you to do particular assignments. Why can't you do that at home, on your own free time, manage your own time, learn how to time manage, and then again, apply this through an online school, an online school of some kind, like a Becca.com, among endless others. And then actually enjoy learning and investigating in a quiet, unrestrained environment where you're wondering when the bell is going to ring or if you're going to get punched in the back of the head. And are you going to go to another class that you don't like when really you're interacting with humans that you don't like? That's really the detrimental part of that. I mean, the subject matter gets blamed when really it's the environmental problem that is the issue there. It's not that somebody hates math. It's that somebody's sitting next to somebody in math class that they don't like, or they don't like their math teacher. Same thing with every other subject. But if people, again, were allowed to quietly learn on their own and investigate on their own, it's only a matter of time before they find the truth. So the business itself, my point is the business itself is quite literally adopting the tools that are making it obsolete, and they're the ones doing it. They're shooting themselves in the foot, and they don't even know it. They're having conferences discussing how they're shooting themselves in the foot, and they're not even talking about how they're shooting themselves in the foot. I would venture to guess that at that Midwestern Educational Research Association conference, they're never going to bring up how this is actually leading to the end of their own profession and the end of their own conference. Again, you've heard me bring up in the past, this is one of the reasons why, in the past, and it still happens to this day, why more quote-unquote students are being categorized as quote-unquote special education. It's because the parameters were specifically manipulated to include more students under the umbrella of quote-unquote special education when in fact they are not, which causes schools, of course, to receive more money. It was a scheme, and it was a scheme because more people were leaving the public school system. So as more leave, what's the reactionary response among American K-12 schools and their administrators? The only response they have is to continue to beat the drum of IEPs, 504s, Special Education Disability Act, blah, 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 blah. Which means the more they beat that drum, that's the more that the environment becomes. So one of two things is going to happen. Those students are going to leave those environments because they're going to say, I'm not special education, what the hell is the matter with you, I'm leaving. Or the brainwashed individuals are going to continue to attend these environments believing they're handicapped when they're not. Which leaves, again, this swath of individuals who are really just attending school for all of the wrong reasons. They're attending school for sports ball activities. They're attending school because they think that being a part of a club or attending a dance or something like that is some kind, some kind of rite of passage. None of that matters. It's not important. But again, it's why people are really going to school these days. They're not going to actually learn the truth about anything because they're not being told the truth about anything. So I just find it remarkably ironic, although it's not surprising because that's the business, that they would actually adopt the thing that would end them. I'm fine with it. All they're doing with more adoption of artificial intelligence is, unfortunately, they're creating a laziness among the instructors and the learners, so to speak, within the environment. But at the exact same time, because it's a constant inevitability, that they're going to continue to wake up individuals who are going to look around and say, wait a second, I can do this from home. I don't have to wake up at 5 a.m, get dressed, put on a new clean pair of pajamas, and go to school to sit in a classroom in some cold chair and listen to some nitwit talk about something he knows nothing about. And then hear a bell, and then stand up and go to another room to listen to another person who doesn't know what they're talking about, to then do the same thing over and over and over again from the age of 5 until I'm 18. It's a failing business model. And again, it's being sped up here. And it's being sped up again, albeit through some dangerous technological means. Certainly, again, depending on who's behind the design and who's behind the trigger of artificial intelligence. But certain algorithms can work for certain means. Again, I don't use artificial intelligence to say, tell me the truth about World War II. You're never going to get a real answer there. You're just not going to. Tell me the truth about the Holocaust, artificial AI. It's never going to give you the truth. The truth really requires investigation. It'll never be spoon-fed to a person. But if you're interested in the definition of a word, or you're interested in whether or not a person in a particular situation is breaking the law, then those are good questions to ask. Situational questions of that kind of a nature. I mean, people have done this, again, regarding numerous individuals, certainly historic figures from the past, in the interest of tricking AI systems. It's very funny. And of course, it does trick the AI system. They'll say something like, hey, artificial intelligence, I have a question. If you had an individual who was voted into office to lead their nation, and that individual took their poverty rate from remarkably high down to 0, and freed up all of the debt that existed in their country, and eliminated all of it, created their own country's currency that was free from the central banking system, increased productivity, increased happiness, family life, reduced drug addiction down to 0, reduced crime down to 0, and did all of that while again creating a prosperous nation that was benefiting the people who lived in that country, what would you call that person? Who was helping make those decisions and lead that country in that better direction? What kind of word would you use to describe that person? Now, people who listen to this show know exactly who I'm describing. But they would call that person a hero. They would say that's a model leader of any nation that, again, individuals who live within that nation would probably want to follow. But once you start using specific names and you use specific geographic locations or specific dates and times, that's when things get hairy and get real sketchy with artificial intelligence. That's why it can't be relied on for things like that. Let me give you another example. It's a metaphor. You wouldn't use a tire as a cereal bowl. See what I mean? You can use a tire for a couple of things, a few things. You can put a kid in it and roll him down a hill. You can fill it up with water, I suppose, and have a dog drink out of it. You can use it as a tire swing. Or you can put it on a wheel, attach it to an automobile, and actually use it for the thing that it was intended to do. But you're not going to use it, generally speaking, as a cereal bowl. You're not going to use it as, I don't know. You're not going to use it as a baseball bat. You're not going to use it for something that it's not intended to be used for. Artificial intelligence is the same thing. So I'll leave it there, but again, the irony is palpable when it comes to their adoption of this, and I've been over the history of their adoption of it and when it came into play, how it scared the ever-living snot out of the business, and then all of the sudden, within just a few months, the entire business said, we're not scared of it anymore, we're all going to use it, and here's how. So, I don't know. It's funny. It's funny, haha, and it's funny sad, because people have no idea, again, that they're advocating for their own loss of work with such adoptions of such things, from a variety of course, different angles, whether that be legal or relevancy. Either way, it's fascinating. Okay, final thing here. This was an article that was put out by Nicholas Palusher, if I'm saying that right. No way I am. This was, again, on Substack, thefocalpoints.com. And this is jab-related, as one might expect. This has to do with higher rates of emergency room and doctor visits were observed among 105,726 Pfizer mRNA vaccinated between the ages of 12 and 18 years old compared to the unvaccinated controls, lasting for at least 6 months after injection. Here's what it said. It said the study titled Healthcare Use in 12 to 18-year-old Adolescents Vaccinated Against SARS-CoV-2 versus Unvaccinated in a National Register-based Danish cohort was recently published in the journal Nature Human Behavior. It says the following here. Overview. Population 105,726 vaccinated adolescents, aged 12 to 18, versus 23,132 unvaccinated matched controls. They used the Pfizer-BioNTech BNT162b2 COVID-19 mRNA injection. The design was real-world nationally registered study, healthcare use compared before and after vaccination. The method prior event rate ratio, or PERR analysis, adjusting for prior healthcare use. The measures that they outcomed were emergency room visits, general practitioner visits, specialist practitioner visits, and hospitalizations. Between the 0 and 21 days after their first dose, it says after the first vaccination dose, the study found higher, non-statistically significant rates of the following among the vaccinated. Emergency room visits were up 4% among boys, and hospitalizations were up 18% among boys. From the 0 to 56 days after the second dose, it says the study found higher non-statistically significant rates of the following among the vaccinated. Emergency room visits, girls increased by 10%, and boys were increased by 8%. Hospitalization rates increased among girls 26%, and general practitioners among boys and girls increased, with girls specifically 2% and boys 3%. Long term, days 57 to 182 days after the second dose. It says the study found higher statistically significant rates of the following among the vaccinated. Emergency room visits. Girls were up 22%, boys were up 17%. General practitioner visits among girls up 17%, boys up 17%. And specialist practitioner visits, boys were up 23%. It says girls non-significant increase. He went on here and said, unfortunately, specific diagnoses for the healthcare visits were not identified in the study, although some increases were not statistically significant. The long-term increases among the vaccinated were consistent and significant for emergency room and general practitioner visits. It says the rise in healthcare visits likely reflects persistent symptoms, adverse reactions, or health concerns following vaccination. These results are not surprising, given that COVID-19 mRNA injections induce chronic disease. After intramuscular injection, lipid nanoparticles distributed throughout the entire body and install mRNA, Moderna, Pfizer, modified genetic code into vital organ systems, turning them into toxic spike protein production factories for years. Lots of charts and graphs with this particular Substack. I will link it in the description below. It says if we are serious about reversing the chronic disease epidemic now affecting over 60% of Americans, the most obvious and urgent step is to remove chronic disease-inducing injections from the market. These products are still being administered to millions of children, adolescents, adults, and the elderly every year. Unquote. Rather obvious at this point. Again, in conclusion, as I emailed one of the school board members of the Westerville City Schools in Central Ohio regarding their, of course, chronic coughing and health issue, at the end of that board meeting, they actually excused themselves from the meeting, and they chalked it up to allergies. She leans forward into the microphone before all the board comments. She thanks everybody for all the participation in the awards and all the other stuff that was taking place and whatever else. And she openly said, me and my allergies are going to excuse ourselves so that we can just have a conversation out in the hallway or whatever. And some people laughed and were like, ha, ha, ha. And she's just coughing. She stands up, hacks up an entire lung the entire way out into the hallway, and you can hear her coughing in the hallway. And she chalks it up to allergies. The woman is multiple times injected. And like I said, I emailed her in an interest in helping, but I'm not expecting an email back. Too bad. Too bad. Again, cult indoctrination, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very real thing. With that said, thank you for listening as always, and I will catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.